Hey y'all, welcome and/or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright, so I don't think I got a lot to say to y'all before this video starts. Besides the fact that I got another plan, I got another idea in my head, y'all. I can't wait till I get to 1,000 subscribers because I'm doing a poll for y'all to see which type of video y'all want for when I reach 1,000 subscribers, because I can feel it in my bones. Like, even though that's my chest, I can feel it all over my body that it's coming. My 1,000 subscribers, it's on the way. So when I get to like 950 subscribers, I'm gonna put up the poll and I'm gonna let y'all pick. But anyways, today's case is the case of Anna Mae Florence, and she was born on August 17th of 1907 in Alabama, and that's pretty much where she spent the majority of her life. That's where she was born, that's where she grew up. She got married there. She didn't have any kids, but Alabama was her life. That was all she knew until her husband passed away. And once that happened, her sisters and her brothers, they decided that it would be a good idea to move Anna Mae from Alabama to Columbus, Ohio, where they were. Which I know is probably a shock for her, because you go from the South in Alabama, where it don't really get too cold, to Columbus, Ohio, where it snows every year. Whew. Anyways, while she lived in Columbus, Anna Mae would often have shopping trips with her sister and her brother-in-law, and they would just go out. You know, she was an older lady by this point. She was in her 70s, but she wasn't missing a beat. She still liked to go out shopping. She still liked to enjoy herself, and so her sister and her brother-in-law will often come and get her, and they will all go shopping together. And on this particular day in 1987, that's exactly what was happening. Her sister Lily and her brother-in-law Alonzo was on their way to her house, but when they got to her door, they heard Anna Mae screaming inside, and they also heard her say, "Kick down the door." Like, Anna Mae was screaming for her life, and she told them to kick down the door. So they didn't hesitate. Alonzo was about to bust down the door, but as he was about to kick the door in, somebody came darting out of the apartment, and Alonzo had them hands like my sister. He was quick with it. He grabbed this person. He grabbed this lady, and she was full of blood, okay? She was pretty much drenched in blood. So even though Alonzo had a tight grip on her, she was able to slip away because she had so much blood on her that she was like slippery. And so she got away, but Alonzo wouldn't let her go that easy. He chased her. Unfortunately, she ended up running away from Alonzo, and he decided that he needed to go back to Anna Mae anyway. So he stopped chasing after whoever this woman was, and he went back to his sister-in-law's house, where Anna Mae was actually still alive. And they were able to talk to her for a little bit, and they asked her, like, who was that woman? And unfortunately, Anna Mae said she didn't know. And obviously, you know, they called 911. But by the time the paramedics, the police, and everybody had got there, unfortunately, Anna Mae had passed away. And so now they had to figure out what happened to her. She was there, and she had a phone cord tied around her neck, and she had been stabbed. And Anna Mae's house reflected a struggle. It was not necessarily a mess, but it was definitely very, very gruesome. There was blood everywhere. But with all this blood that was in Anna Mae's house, there wasn't a lot of like evidence that jumped out and said who this killer was. At this point, DNA technology wasn't even a thought. Maybe blood typing, sure, but if you don't have a suspect to run it against, then it's kind of it's like a 1 in a million chance of finding that person without a suspect. But they did, however, find a partial fingerprint. It was either on the wall by the front door or on the door frame of the front door. I'm not really 100% sure, but they did find a partial fingerprint. They collected evidence. They collected, you know, Anna Mae's purse, chairs, just pretty much anything in the house that looked like it could be potential evidence at some point. They decided to collect. And they also decided to canvass the apartment complex. And when they did, they found out that there was a couple other neighbors who also had somebody come to their front door, and it was a well-dressed young lady, and she was pretty much just begging for money. And a couple of people said that she was begging for money for a funeral. Other people said she asked for money for another thing. Some people gave her money, some people didn't. And so now they have to find this young lady, but nobody knows who this person is. So it's kind of a good tip, but not really, because they still don't know who this woman is. So not too long after Miss Anime's death, the police get an anonymous phone call. And this anonymous tipster tells detectives that a woman named Danita Campbell told him that she was the person who committed this crime against Miss Anime. And the police are like, okay, well, thank you for that. Are you willing to tell us who you are? And he was like, no, absolutely not. I will not be giving you my name. But the police reassure him that he's not a suspect in this. They just want to potentially contact him for more information later down the line. And so he ends up giving them his name, and his name is Odell. And so right away, they asked Mr. Odell to come down to the station. Like I said, he was already kind of skeptical, but since they reassured him that he wasn't a suspect, he went down to the station. And they asked him, like, hey, are you willing to wear a wire to trip Danita up to get her to confess to this crime while you record her? And at first he was like, okay, look, I'm all in. She needs to be arrested for this. This was wrong, whatever, whatever. And he was all in. However, the day comes where he is supposed to wear the wire and talk to Danita. However, he backed out. He said he did not want to go through with it. He didn't want to do it no more. And he pretty much just ghosted the detectives, and they didn't hear from him no more after that. Like, Odell was gone. But since Odell did give this tip about Danita, they was like, okay, cool, bet, got her. So they pull her over, like, for some, like, bogus traffic stop, I guess. Maybe it wasn't bogus, but they catch her on a traffic stop. And they bring her in, and they fingerprint her. Because remember, they still have that partial print that they got from the crime scene. And so they fingerprint Danita, but since it was a partial print, they just didn't get a match for Danita's fingerprint to the partial print. And since they couldn't confirm that this was, in fact, Danita's partial fingerprint, they had to let her go. And because of this, the case ended up going cold. But Miss Anime's brother, he not letting up on the police. He's calling them pretty much every single week to try to figure out if they have any new leads, if they have any new suspects, what's going on with her case. And unfortunately, Miss Anime's case gets pushed to the back burner because there's more cases coming in. They're not getting any new leads on this one. Like, they didn't forget about it, but they kind of had to set hers aside. And unfortunately, her brother ended up passing away before he ever found out what happened to his sister. However, he made his daughter promise that she would find out what happened to her aunt. So once Miss Anime brother passed away, his daughter took over, and she called the detectives relentlessly. She kept calling and kept calling and kept calling. And one day when Miss Anime's niece Becky called the station, she got a new detective. And as she's telling this new detective about her aunt's case, the detective is typing up on the computer, looking it up as they speak. And this detective really got intrigued with this case because this was a real case of, like, she did not deserve this. Miss Anime was literally just in her home minding her own business, and this happened to her. And so this detective got intrigued by the case, and she decided to take it on. And so now the case has been reopened. This detective decided that she needed to start from the beginning, so she went from the top. Unfortunately, the crime scene was no longer there because it had been torn down, but she did have, photos, recordings, just all the paperwork portion of it. She had it. And so she's going through it, and she finds out that there's these tapes of the guy, Odell, telling that Danita did this. And so she's listening to these tapes and listening to these tapes. Maybe the old detectives missed something. She heard that Odell had told the original detectives that Danita told him that there was a welfare check in Miss Anime's purse. And this new detective, she knows that that information was never released to the public. She knows that the only person who would know that was the killer. So she was sure that Odell was a reliable tip and that Danita did give him this information. But she had to figure out how she was going to get Danita, because once again, the partial fingerprint didn't match to Danita. Well, couldn't be confirmed as Danita's fingerprint. So she starts looking through old photos. And once she started looking through old photos, she's pretty much just looking for anything that was out of place, anything that could have a fingerprint on it, anything that could have been touched by Danita. And so while she's looking at the photos, she sees that there's a chair by the front door. And she also sees that there's a jar of mayonnaise in this chair. And like, why is the mayonnaise in the chair? She just felt like Miss Anime wasn't about to be making no sandwiches in the living room. And if she was, then where was the bread and the knife? Because just, no. Anyway, so she decided to go to the evidence lockers to like get all of the physical evidence that was collected, just praying that this mayonnaise jar was in the evidence collection. And sure enough, this mayonnaise jar was there. Thank God. So she takes this mayonnaise jar and she takes it to the lab where they tested for fingerprints using a super glue fuming technique. And y'all, they found a fingerprint at the top of the jar, like towards the lid of the jar. But the thumbprint that was on the jar was like upside down. So now they got a fingerprint, and it's a good fingerprint. It's a full fingerprint. So after 25 years, this MAYO jar still had like a good fingerprint on it. And they did not think that it was Miss Anna Mae's because, like I said, it was upside down as if the person had picked it up to hold it like they was going to hit somebody with a jar of mayonnaise. Like, I don't know if that was really supposed to do something, but they picked it up like they was about to hit somebody with a jar of mayonnaise. So they was like, okay, this got to be the suspects. And the suspect right now is Danita. So remember, Danita was pulled over by the police though all those years ago. So there was a fingerprint card readily available. So they was about to go test the fingerprint from the jar to Danita's fingerprint card. But the old detectives had lost the fingerprint card, y'all. So now they got to get Danita again. I can only imagine how frustrating that is. Like, they have this girl right at their fingertips, and they can't get her because these old detectives have lost the damn card. But nonetheless, these detectives are determined. They're about to get Danita by any means necessary. And they go into the system and look up Danita, and they find out that she got a warrant for jaywalking. So she either didn't show up for court or she didn't pay her fine. Either way, she now got a warrant out for her arrest for jaywalking. And so they go pick her up on this warrant. But since it's such a simple warrant, they really can't hold her too long. But they do get a chance to fingerprint her when she comes to the station. So they take this fingerprint card back to the lab and they tell the fingerprint analysis lady that they got to do this quick but efficiently so that they can actually arrest Danita on Miss Anna Mae's murder. So this fingerprint analysis lady is going in, she looking at the fingerprint and she looking at Danita's fingerprints, and things are not adding up. That thumbprint, upside down, sideways, left and right, it's not Danita's. So now what? So another few years would pass, and this detective was still so determined to find Miss Anna Mae's killer. So she decided that she had to find Odell, because at this point, he the only person who know for real. And it wasn't Danita. So what's going on, sir? So they find Odell's new address and they go get Odell. And so Odell is at the police station and they talking to him and they play these recordings for him. And Odell is like, okay, yeah, that's my name, that's my birthday, that's my social security number, and that's my old address. But y'all, that's not me on those recordings. And I can tell you that's not me because he's spelling street names that I can't spell because I don't know how to read and write. So the real Odell was basically illiterate, and so he's saying like, this cannot be me. And so the police, they believe him because they can see the like, oh my god, who got this much information about me in his eyes, like, what the fuck? So they tell him like, look, okay, listen to this recording a couple more times and see if you can try to figure out who this is, because we need to know. And so Odell listens to that a couple more times and he's like, you know what, that actually sounds like my cousin Chris. And the reason why he would know all this information about me is because back in 1987, when I would go to fill out applications and stuff, Chris would come with me and he would fill out the forms. He would read and fill out the forms for me. So that's how he would know all of my information, like literally everything about me. So now the detectives got to go find Chris, and they find Chris at his mama's house. So while they talking to Chris, Chris denies everything. He like, I don't know what y'all talking about. I got the wrong Chris. I really don't know what y'all talking about. But his mama pretty much convinced him to tell the truth, to let the detectives know what was really going on. And so that's exactly what he did. Chris was like, all right, fine, I'm gonna tell y'all what's really going on. So his friend who lived a couple doors down actually did come to him and tell him that she committed this crime because she had owed a drug dealer and she was going around panhandling. Well, is that panhandling if you going door to door? I really don't know. But she was going around begging for money. And when Miss Anime answered the door, she actually invited this young lady into her house and she gave her some money. But when Miss Anime went into her purse to get her the money, she saw that Anime had that Social Security check in her bag. So she knew that she had some more money. And that's when she decided to attack Miss Anime so that she could get even more money. And Miss Anime, she wasn't going. She put up a fight. She fought for her life. And even with all the fighting that Miss Anime did, unfortunately, this person was able to overpower her, strangle her, and stab her. But she wasn't able to get the check out of Miss Anime's purse because somebody came to the door. And when they came when they came to the door, they obviously startled her. She didn't expect nobody to come to the door, and she just fled the scene. And so the detectives are like, okay, thank you for telling us the story. Now, who was it for real? And he says that it was one of his neighbors named Zena Roberson. And the reason that he lied before was because he did want somebody to go to jail for this crime, but he didn't want Zena to go to jail for this crime because she was his friend. And so when he called and the detective asked his name, he didn't want to give his real name. So he gave the information of the cousin that he knew all of his information. And there you have it. So now they have a real suspect whose name is Zena Roberson. And so now they got to find Zena. And luckily, they did know that Zena lived 2 doors down from Chris. And so they looked up that address. And sure enough, there came a young lady by the name of Zena Roberson, who had a license back at that time, who lived at that address. They found out that this Zena Roberson now lived in Rome, Georgia. So now they got to call the police in Rome. And they find out that Zena had actually been arrested previously. It was a while ago maybe, but she had been arrested on a shoplifting charge, and they took her fingerprints. And so they ended up sending her fingerprint card or a copy of it or something like that from Rome, Georgia to Columbus, Ohio. And they took it in for fingerprint analysis. And this was their last chance because their captain, I think it was their captain, somebody in the police department who was a higher up told these 2 detectives who was working on this case, look, if this don't work out, if this is not y'all real suspect, if it's like a dud like the last one, y'all gonna have to, hang this one up for now again. It's gonna have to be a cold case once again. And so they were praying, fingers crossed, toes crossed, eyes crossed, all of it. And finally, the fingerprint analysis came back and it was a match. It was Zena. So finally, they had the real suspect. They had the culprit for Miss Anime's murder. Now all they had to do was go and get her. So they go down to Rome, Georgia, and they talk to the police officers there. They decide to put Zena's face on a Facebook page that the Rome Police Department had. And they just asked, has anybody seen this woman? They didn't say she was wanted for a crime. They didn't say nothing like that. All they asked was, has anybody seen this woman? And right away, like less than 2 minutes, somebody called in and was like, look, this is the lady that I be always seeing on the bus stop at this intersection every single day. And based off of that, they were somehow able to find her address. And so they pull up on Zena. They go to her house and she invites them in, but she nervous, and they can tell she nervous because Zena is sweating, baby, like visible pouring of the sweat. They said she was sweating bullets from head to damn toe. Her socks and her drawers was probably wet because she was sweating that much. And she denied it. She was like, I don't know nothing about no homicide. I did live in Columbus for a little bit, but y'all got me with the homicide because I don't know nothing about it. And so they was like, okay, well, just come down to the station, give a formal statement, and you'll be on your way. So Zena go down to the police station, and they did not want her to lawyer up. So pretty quickly into the interview, they show her a picture of Miss Anime. Like, have you ever seen this lady before? Have you ever been into her apartment at any point in your life? And she said no, which was exactly what they wanted, because they wanted her to deny ever being in there, but because they had proof that she was in there, so they knew she was lying. And they had her right there. They arrested her on the spot. And on August 25th, 2014, Zena Roberson was sentenced to 15 years to life. So finally, after 27 years, this family finally got to find out what happened to Miss Anime. And I can only imagine Alonzo's like mental process. Like, you had this woman in your grasp and she was able to slip away. Like, I just want to fight her. I don't know. I just would have just gut checked her one time. She wouldn't have got away then, I bet. Bitch. But yeah, y'all, that is all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye. He made That refrigerator doing a little too much over there. Thank you. Where they tested for fingerprints using a super glue fuming technique, and so Miss Zena Robert, no, I'm not gonna call her Miss. She don't get that luxury. And on August 25th, 1990, girl, bye. Put Zena's face. What is that? Is that an ant?